The morning sun cast long shadows through the broken windows of what used to be Miller's grocery store. Jake Morrison stepped carefully over chunks of concrete and twisted metal that littered the floor. His Marine uniform was dirty and torn from 3 months of fighting in the ruins of New Denver. The Zephyrians had come from the sky without warning and turned the world upside down in just a few weeks. Jake's stomach growled as he searched through the empty shelves. Most of the food was gone or spoiled, but he kept looking anyway. His unit needed supplies, and he needed to eat something today. The aliens had cut off all supply lines, and every can of food could mean the difference. Between life and death for his squad, a soft whimpering sound made him freeze. Jake pulled out his rifle and listened carefully. The sound came again from somewhere behind the overturned shopping carts near the back of the store. It sounded like crying, but very quiet, as if someone was trying not to be heard. Jake moved slowly toward the sound. He had learned to be careful about everything since the invasion started. The Zephyrians were tricky, and sometimes they used recordings of human voices to set traps. But this sounded different. This sounded real and scared. Behind a pile of fallen shelves, he found her. A little girl sat curled up in a corner with her knees pulled up to her chest. She looked about 8 years old, with pale skin and long dark hair that was dirty and tangled. Her clothes were torn and too big for her small frame. When she looked up at Jake, her eyes were the strangest violet color he had ever seen. The girl made a small frightened noise and tried to push herself further back into the corner. Jake lowered his rifle and held up his hands to show he meant no harm. The child watched him with those unusual eyes, but did not try to run away. "Hey, there, little one," Jake said in his gentlest voice. "I'm not going to hurt you. Are you okay?" The girl tilted her head to one side like she was trying to understand his words. Then she spoke, but her voice was strange. She mixed English words with odd clicking sounds and soft whistles that Jake had never heard before. "Hungry," she said clearly, then made a series of clicks. "Many days no food?" Her grammar was wrong, but Jake understood what she meant. Jake's heart went out to the scared child. He reached into his pack and pulled out his last can of vegetable soup. It was supposed to be his dinner, but looking at the girl's thin face and hollowed cheeks, he knew she needed it more than he did. "Here," he said, opening the can with his field knife. "This is for you." The girl's violet eyes went wide when she saw the food. She reached out with trembling hands to take the can. Jake noticed her fingers were longer than normal and seemed to bend in ways that looked almost impossible. But he was too focused on her hungry expression to think much about it. She drank the soup straight from the can, making small happy sounds as she ate. Jake had never seen anyone so grateful for a simple meal. When she finished, she looked up at him with tears in her strange eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she said something in those clicking, whistling sounds that Jake could not understand, but the tone was clearly grateful. "What's your name, sweetie?" Jake asked, sitting down cross-legged so he would seem less scary to the small girl. "Kira," she said after thinking for a moment. Then she pointed at Jake with one of her long, strange fingers. "I'm Jake," he told her. "Have you been hiding here long?" Kira held up both hands, showing all her fingers, then closed them and opened them again several times. Jake guessed she meant many days or maybe weeks. The thought of this little girl surviving alone in the ruins for so long made his chest feel tight. His radio crackled to life with the voice of Sergeant Lopez. "Morrison, where are you?" "We need to move out in 10 minutes. Jake looked at Kira, who was watching him with those incredible violet eyes. He wanted to take her back to the base, but he knew Colonel Hayes would ask too many questions about where she came from. The girl's strange eyes and unusual fingers would make people suspicious, and Jake did not want her to be afraid anymore. "I have to go," he told Kira gently. "But I'll try to come back tomorrow, okay?" Kira nodded and reached out to touch Jake's hand. Her skin was warmer than he expected, and her touch was very gentle. She said something in her clicking language that sounded like a promise or maybe a blessing. Jake stood up and shouldered his rifle. "Stay hidden and stay safe, little one. I'll bring more food when I can." As he walked away, Jake turned back once to see Kira still sitting in her corner watching him go. Something about her expression stayed with him as he made his way back through the ruined streets to meet his squad. He had seen many terrible things since the war started, but he had also learned that small acts of kindness mattered more than ever. That night, as Jake lay on his narrow cot in the underground bunker that served as their base, he thought about the strange little girl. Her violet eyes haunted his dreams, and he wondered what her story was. Where had she come from, and where was her family? How had she learned to speak English mixed with those odd sounds? But mostly he thought about how grateful she had looked when he gave her the soup. In a world full of death and destruction, that moment of simple human kindness felt like the most important thing he had done in months. Jake promised himself he would go back tomorrow and check on her. Maybe he could convince the colonel to let them bring one more refugee to the camp. The next morning, Jake volunteered for patrol duty in the same sector. He told Lopez he wanted to check for Zephyrian activity near the old shopping district, but really he just wanted to see if Kira was still safe. He had managed to save an extra ration bar from breakfast, and he hoped the little girl would still be there waiting for him. Jake had no idea that his simple act of sharing soup with a hungry child would change everything. He did not know that Kira was not quite what she appeared to be, or that his kindness had been observed by someone who could snap necks without making a sound. All he knew was that a little girl had been hungry, and he had helped her, and that felt right in a world gone wrong. 2 days passed before Jake could return to Miller's grocery store. The Zephyrians had launched a surprise attack on the eastern sector, and every Marine was needed to hold the line. Jake spent 48 hours fighting in the rubble-filled streets, watching good soldiers fall to alien weapons that burned through armor like paper. When the attack finally ended, Jake was exhausted but alive, and his first thought was of the little girl with violet eyes. He volunteered for patrol duty again, and this time brought 2 extra ration bars and a bottle of clean water. Jake hoped Kira was still hiding in her corner and still safe. The thought of her alone and hungry had bothered him every quiet moment during the fighting. But when Jake reached the grocery store, he stopped in shock. The building looked completely different. All the debris that had been scattered across the floor was gone. The broken shelves were stacked neatly against one wall. The twisted metal and chunks of concrete had been cleared away, leaving the floor spotless. Strange patterns were carved into the concrete where the debris used to be. The lines formed perfect geometric shapes that seemed to flow into each other like water. Jake had never seen anything like them. The carvings were too precise to be made by human tools and too complex to be random. Damage from the war. Jake stepped carefully into the transformed space with his rifle ready. This felt like a trap, but he could not leave without knowing what happened to Kira. The silence in the store was different too. It was not the empty quiet of an abandoned building, but the watchful stillness of something waiting. "Kira?" Jake called softly. "Are you here, little one?" Movement in the shadows caught his eye. Kira stepped out from behind the neatly stacked shelves with a smile on her pale face. She looked healthier than before, and her dark hair was clean and braided. But she was not alone. A tall woman emerged from the same shadows, moving with a grace that made Jake's skin crawl. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, with the same pale skin and violet eyes as Kira. Her long black hair fell past her shoulders like liquid silk, and she wore dark clothing that seemed to absorb light. Every step she took was completely silent, even though broken glass still covered parts of the floor. Jake raised his rifle halfway, then stopped. The woman showed no fear of his weapon. She simply watched him with those strange violet eyes and smiled a smile that was both warm and terrifying at the same time. "You must be Jake," the woman said in perfect English. Her voice was soft and musical, but there was something underneath it that made Jake think of deep water and hidden things. "Kira has told me so much about your kindness." Jake kept his weapon ready, but did not point it directly at the woman. Something about her made every instinct he had scream danger, but Kira ran to his side and hugged his leg like he was family. The little girl chattered happily in her mix of English and clicking sounds while the woman watched with obvious affection. "Who are you?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "My name is Luna," the woman replied. "I am Kira's mother, and I have come to thank you for your compassion toward my daughter." Jake noticed that Luna never seemed to blink. Her violet eyes stayed fixed on his face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. When she moved her head, the motion was too smooth, like a snake tracking prey. But her words sounded genuine, and Kira seemed happy to see her. "Where did you come from?" Jake asked. "And how did you clean up this whole place?" Luna tilted her head in the same way Kira had done when trying to understand something. "We have been hiding nearby. As for the cleaning, it was necessary to make this space safe for my daughter. The debris could have hurt her if she played here." Jake looked around at the perfect geometric patterns carved into the floor. "You did all this in 2 days?" "Time moves differently when you are motivated by love," Luna said cryptically. Something was very wrong here, but Jake could not figure out what. Luna and Kira looked human except for their strange eyes and slightly odd proportions. But the way Luna moved and the impossible precision of the carved patterns made Jake think they were something else entirely. "Are you refugees from the city?" Jake asked carefully. Luna's smile became sadder. "We are refugees, but not from your city. We have been refugees for much longer than your war has been happening." Kira tugged on Jake's uniform and held up her hands. She was holding the empty soup can from 2 days ago, but it was polished until it shined like new metal. She offered it back to Jake with a stream of clicking sounds that seemed happy and grateful. "She wants to return your gift," Luna translated. "But I told her you gave it freely and she should keep it as a reminder of human kindness." Jake knelt down to Kira's level and gently pushed the can back toward her. "You keep it, sweetie. I'm glad it helped you." Kira beamed and said something to Luna in their strange, clicking language. Luna's expression became even more thoughtful as she listened to her daughter. "She says you have a good heart," Luna told Jake. "She says you shared your food even when you were hungry yourself. This is a rare thing in our experience." "Most people would do the same thing," Jake said, standing back up. Luna shook her head slowly. "No, Jake Morrison. Most people would not. We have been watching your species for a very long time, and acts of pure, selfless kindness are precious and unusual." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "You've been watching us? For how long?" "Long enough to know that humans are capable of both great cruelty and incredible compassion. Long enough to hope that the compassionate ones might accept us if they knew what we really are." Before Jake could ask what she meant, his radio crackled with Sergeant Lopez's voice. "Morrison, check in. We've got Zephyrian movement 2 clicks. From your position?" Jake grabbed his radio. "Copy that, Sergeant. I'm heading back now." When he looked up, Luna and Kira were both watching him with those unblinking violet eyes. There was something in their expressions that seemed almost sad. "You have to go fight the Star Killers," Luna said quietly. "Star Killers?" Jake repeated. "What you call Zephyrians. They destroy worlds and kill stars for fuel. They have done this to many places before yours." Jake stared at Luna, wondering how she could possibly know that. The Zephyrians had never communicated with humans about their intentions or their history. "How do you know that?" he asked. Luna's smile returned, but this time it showed teeth that seemed just a little too sharp. "Because we have been fighting them much longer than you have. And because your kindness to Kira has convinced me that it is. Time humans learn they are not alone in this fight." Jake's radio crackled again with increasing urgency. "Morrison, we need you back here now. 3 Zephyrian scouts spotted heading your way." Jake looked at Luna and Kira with growing confusion and concern. Nothing about this situation made sense. But he could not leave them here if alien soldiers were coming. Even if Luna and Kira were strange, they were still just a woman and child who needed protection. "You both need to come with me," Jake said quickly. "It's not safe here. The Zephyrians will kill anyone they find." Luna's violet eyes became very calm, and she placed a gentle hand on Kira's shoulder. "Thank you for your concern, Jake, but we will be perfectly safe here." "You don't understand," Jake insisted. "These aliens have weapons that can burn through steel. They kill humans for sport. You can't fight them." "Cannot fight them?" Luna repeated with what sounded like genuine curiosity. "Jake Morrison, who told you we were human?" Before Jake could answer that question, Luna moved faster than his eyes could follow. One moment she was standing 10 feet away, and the next moment His rifle was in her hands while his arms were pinned gently but firmly behind his back. Jake had not even seen her cross the distance between them. "How did you do that?" Jake gasped, struggling against her grip, but finding it impossible to break free. Luna released him immediately and handed back his rifle with the same gentle smile. "We are not what you think we are, Jake. My people are called the Aethery, and we have been hiding on your world for many generations." Jake checked his rifle to make sure it was still functional while his mind tried to process what had just happened. Luna had moved faster than any human could move, and her strength was far beyond what her slender frame should have allowed. "Aethery?" Jake repeated. "You're aliens?" "We prefer the term refugees," Luna said sadly. "Our homeworld was destroyed long ago by the same creatures you call Zephyrians. We escaped in small groups and have been scattered across many worlds ever since." Kira tugged on Luna's dark clothing and pointed toward the front of the store. She made a series of quick clicking sounds that seemed urgent. Luna nodded and put her finger to her lips in a gesture for silence. "The scouts you mentioned are here," Luna whispered to Jake. "3 of them approaching from the east entrance." Jake raised his rifle and moved toward the front windows, but Luna caught his arm with surprising gentleness. "There is no need for you to fight them, Jake. Watch and learn what the Aethery can do." Luna kissed Kira's forehead and whispered something in their clicking language. Then she simply vanished. One moment she was standing beside Jake, and the next moment she was gone as if she had never existed at all. Jake spun around looking for any sign of her but saw nothing. Even Kira seemed to have disappeared, though Jake was sure she had been right there seconds ago. The grocery store was silent except for the sound of heavy footsteps approaching from outside. 3 Zephyrian scouts entered through the broken front doors. They were tall insectoid creatures with 4 arms and glossy black armor that reflected the dim light. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy as they swept the store looking for human targets. Jake crouched behind an overturned shopping cart. Knowing his rifle would barely scratch their armor, the first scout moved toward the back of the store, where Jake was hiding, its weapon charged with a high-pitched whine that meant death for any human it found. But as it passed a shadow near the wall, something impossible happened. The scout's head twisted completely around with a sound like breaking branches. Its body collapsed to the floor without making any noise at all. The other 2 scouts did not even notice. Their companion had fallen. The second scout walked past the neat stack of shelves where Luna had arranged the debris. Another shadow seemed to flow like water, and suddenly the scout was falling sideways, with its neck bent at an angle that should have been impossible. Again there was no sound except the soft thud of an armored body hitting concrete. The third scout finally realized something was wrong, and began turning in circles with its weapon raised. It made harsh clicking sounds that might have been calls for backup or expressions of fear. But shadows moved all around it now, and before it could fire a single shot, its weapon clattered to the floor, followed immediately by its lifeless body. Jake stared in amazement, as Luna simply stepped out of empty air near the fallen aliens. She looked exactly the same as before, with no sign that she had just killed 3 armored soldiers with her bare hands. Her dark clothing was not even wrinkled, and her violet eyes held the same gentle warmth they had shown when talking about Kira. "How is that possible?" Jake whispered. Luna walked over to him, moving with that same impossible silence. "My people evolved on a world where being seen meant being eaten. We learned to move without sound and strike without warning. It kept us alive when the Zephyrians came to our home." Kira appeared from behind a pillar where she had been safely hidden during the brief fight. She ran to Luna, who picked her up and held her close while checking to make sure she was unharmed. The little girl chattered happily in their clicking language, seeming completely unbothered by the violence she had just witnessed. "You killed them so easily," Jake said, looking at the fallen scouts. "They had armor and energy weapons, and you just snapped their necks silently," Luna finished for him. "Yes, it is what we do best. The Zephyrians have thick armor, but their joints are weak points. A precise strike at the right angle, and they fall just like any other living thing." Jake realized. His hands were shaking as the reality of what he had seen sank in. Luna was not human, and she was definitely not helpless. She was something far more dangerous than any weapon in his arsenal. "Why are you telling me this?" Jake asked. "Why reveal yourselves now?" Luna set Kira down gently and turned to face Jake with those unblinking violet eyes. "Because your kindness to my daughter showed us something we had begun to think was extinct among intelligent species. You gave food to a hungry child without asking what she was or where she came from. You did it simply because it was right." "Anyone would have done the same thing," Jake protested. "No, Jake Morrison," Luna said firmly. "Most beings would not. We have watched your species for decades waiting to see if humans were worth saving from the Zephyrians. Acts of pure compassion like yours are what convinced us that they are." Kira walked over to one of the fallen scouts and poked it curiously with her long finger. She said something to Luna in their language that sounded like a question. "She wants to know if these were the bad aliens who hurt people," Luna translated. "I told her yes, and now she feels safer knowing they cannot hurt anyone anymore." Jake looked from the dead scouts to Luna to little Kira and felt his entire understanding of the war shifting. "There are more of you, aren't there? More Ethery hiding on Earth?" Luna nodded slowly. "Many more. We have been preparing to help humanity fight the Zephyrians, but we needed to be sure humans could be trusted. Your simple act of sharing soup with a hungry child has given us that assurance." Jake stood among the fallen Zephyrian scouts trying to process everything he had just witnessed. Luna watched him patiently while Kira played with the geometric patterns carved into the floor. The silence stretched until Jake's radio crackled. Again with Sergeant Lopez's voice demanding his location and status. "I have to report back," Jake said finally. "My unit will come looking for me if I don't check in soon." Luna tilted her head thoughtfully. "What will you tell them about us?" "I don't know," Jake admitted. "This is bigger than anything I can handle alone. My commanding officer needs to know about your people and what you can do." "And if your commander decides we are a threat to be eliminated?" Luna asked softly. Jake thought about Colonel Patricia Hayes and her iron determination to protect human survivors at any cost. Hayes had made hard decisions that kept people alive, but she did not trust easily, and she definitely would not trust aliens who could kill without being seen. "She's tough, but she's fair," Jake said. "If you really want to help us fight the Zephyrians, then she listened." Luna was quiet for a long moment, watching Kira trace the carved patterns with her finger. Then she nodded as if coming to an important decision. "Very well, Jake Morrison. We will come with you to meet your colonel. But I must warn you that if your people try to harm my daughter, I will protect her with everything I possess." The threat in Luna's gentle voice made Jake's skin crawl, but he understood her position completely. Any mother would do the same thing to protect her child. "I'll make sure that doesn't happen," Jake promised. The journey back to the human base took 2 hours through the ruined streets of New Denver. Jake was amazed at how easily Luna and Kira moved through the dangerous terrain. They stepped over debris without making a sound and seemed to know exactly where to go, even though they had never been to the base before. Kira skipped along beside Jake, chattering in her mix of English and clicking sounds. She seemed excited about meeting more humans and kept asking Luna questions that made the older Ethery smile. Jake found himself growing protective of the strange little girl, despite everything he had learned about her. True nature. When they reached the hidden entrance to the underground bunker that served as Resistance headquarters, Jake called ahead on his radio. "Base, this is Morrison requesting permission to bring in 2 civilian refugees." "Copy, Morrison," came the reply from Corporal Davis. "Bring them through decontamination and report to Colonel Hayes immediately." The base was a maze of concrete tunnels that had been built as a subway system before the war. Now it housed 300 human survivors, including families with children. Jake led Luna and Kira through the checkpoints where guards stared openly at the strangers with violet eyes. Colonel Hayes was waiting in the command center when they arrived. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. Hayes had been fighting aliens for 3 months, and the strain showed in every line of her weathered face. "Marines Morrison," Hayes said, looking past Jake to study Luna and Kira carefully. "These are your refugees?" "Yes, ma'am," Jake replied, standing at attention. This is Luna and her daughter Kira. They have important information about the enemy. Hayes circled around Luna like a predator studying prey. Where did you find them, Morrison, and why do they look like they haven't missed a meal since this war started? Luna remained perfectly still during the Colonel's inspection, but Jake noticed her violet eyes tracking every movement Hayes made. When Hayes stopped directly in front of her, Luna spoke in that musical voice that somehow managed to sound respectful and dangerous at the same time. Colonel Hayes, I am honored to meet the leader of the New Denver Resistance. Your reputation for protecting civilians is well known among my people. Hayes raised an eyebrow. Your people? And who exactly are your people, miss? We are called the Ethery, Luna replied calmly. We are refugees from a world the Zephyrians destroyed long before they came to Earth. We have been hiding on your planet for many generations, waiting for the right time to reveal ourselves. The command center went completely quiet. Hayes stared at Luna for a full minute before speaking again. You're telling me you're aliens? Hayes said flatly. We prefer the term refugees, Luna corrected gently. But yes, we are not native to Earth. Hayes looked at Jake with an expression that promised a very uncomfortable conversation later. Morrison, did you verify any of this before bringing them to my base? Jake straightened his shoulders. Colonel, the first saw her kill 3 Zephyrian scouts. With her bare hands, she moved faster than my eyes could follow and killed them all without making a sound. Hayes turned back to Luna with increased interest. Show me. Luna glanced at Kira, who was watching the adults with curious violet eyes. I would prefer not to demonstrate my abilities in front of the children here, Colonel. But I can offer something better than a demonstration. Which is? Hayes asked suspiciously. Luna reached into her dark clothing and pulled out a small device that glowed with soft blue light. Complete intelligence on Zephyrian positions within 50 miles of this location. Troop strengths, weapon caches, and command structures. Hayes took the device and studied it carefully. How do I know this isn't some kind of trap? Because Colonel Hayes, Luna said with that patient smile, if we wanted to harm your people, we could have done so at any time over the past 3 months. My people have been moving through your tunnels unseen since the day you established this base. The blood drained from Hayes's face. You've been spying on us? We have been protecting you, Luna corrected. 17 Zephyrian infiltration attempts have been stopped by E3 Guardians you never knew were there. 23 supply convoys reached this base safely because my people eliminated the alien patrols that would have destroyed them. Hayes looked around the command center as if seeing it for the first time. How many of you are there? More than you might expect, but fewer than we once were, Luna replied sadly. The Zephyrians killed most of my people when they destroyed our world. Those of us who escaped have spent centuries hiding and surviving. Jake watched Hayes process this information. He could see the wheels turning in her tactical mind as she weighed the potential benefits against the obvious risks. Why reveal yourselves now? Hayes asked finally. Luna placed her hand gently on Kira's shoulder. Because Maureen Morrison showed kindness to my daughter without knowing what she was. He shared his food with a hungry child simply because it was the right thing to do? That act of pure compassion convinced us that humanity is worth saving. Hayes looked at Jake again with something that might have been pride mixed with exasperation. Morrison has a talent for making complicated situations even more complicated. Colonel, Jake said carefully, if they really have been protecting us without us knowing, then maybe we should listen to what they're offering. Hayes studied the glowing device in her hands, then looked back at Luna. What exactly are you offering? An alliance, Luna said simply. Your strategic knowledge and determination combined with our stealth and combat abilities. Together we can drive the Zephyrians from Earth and make sure they never return. Kira tugged on Luna's clothing and whispered something in their clicking language. Luna smiled and translated for the humans. My daughter wants to know if this means she can finally play with other children instead of hiding all the time. Hayes looked down at the little girl with violet eyes, and for the first time since Jake had known her, the Colonel's expression softened slightly. That depends, Hayes said to Luna, on whether your people can really do what you claim they can do. Colonel Hayes studied the intelligence device Luna had given her for 3 days before making her decision. The information it contained was beyond anything human scouts had been able to gather. Detailed maps of Zephyrian positions, troop movements, and weapon storage locations filled the small glowing screen. Most importantly, it showed the location of the Alien Command Center in downtown New Denver, where the regional commander coordinated all enemy operations in the Western Territories. During those 3 days, Luna demonstrated her people's abilities by leading human patrols through enemy lines without being detected. She taught volunteers basic stealth techniques, though none of them could match Ethery natural abilities. Kira made friends with the other children in the base, and her happy laughter echoed through the tunnels for the first time since the invasion began. Jake watched Luna work with the human soldiers and marveled at her patience. She never showed frustration when they failed to move as silently as she did, or when they stumbled over techniques that came naturally to her people. Instead, she praised every small improvement and found ways to adapt Ethery methods to human limitations. On the 4th day, Hayes called a meeting of all squad leaders in the command center. Luna stood beside the colonel while Kira sat quietly in a corner drawing pictures of flowers and butterflies on pieces of scrap paper. Intelligence suggests the Zephyrians are planning to expand their control grid to include the entire western seaboard, Hayes announced. If they succeed, every human settlement from here to California will be under their direct control within 2 months. The assembled Marines and volunteers exchanged grim looks. They all knew what Zephyrian control meant. Complete extermination of human populations followed by strip mining of natural resources to fuel their war machine. However, Hayes continued, we now have an opportunity to strike back. Our new allies have provided intelligence on the enemy command structure and offered to assist in a coordinated assault on their regional headquarters. Sergeant Lopez raised his hand. Colonel, what kind of assistance are we talking about exactly? Luna stepped forward with that graceful movement that still made Jake's skin crawl, despite everything he had learned about her. My people will infiltrate the command center ahead of your assault and eliminate key defensive positions. We will also provide each of your squads with personal cloaking devices that will hide you from Zephyrian sensors. Cloaking devices? Lopez repeated skeptically. Luna reached into her dark clothing and pulled out what looked like a simple metal bracelet. She placed it on Lopez's wrist and touched a small button on its surface. Lopez immediately became translucent like a ghost, then faded from view completely. Holy hell, someone whispered as Lopez's disembodied voice came from empty air. I can't even see my own hands. Luna touched the bracelet again, and Lopez reappeared looking shocked and amazed. The effect lasts for 30 minutes before requiring a recharge period, she explained. It will not make you invisible to visual observation, but Zephyrian targeting systems will not be able to lock onto you. Hayes nodded approvingly. The plan is simple. Luna and her people will enter the command center first and neutralize as many guards as possible without raising alarms. Then our assault teams will move in using the cloaking devices to avoid detection until we reach the main control room. Jake raised his hand. Colonel, what about evacuation routes? That building is going to be crawling with enemy reinforcements once the fighting starts. That is where Kira comes in, Luna said with obvious pride in her daughter. Everyone looked at the little girl who was still quietly drawing in the corner. She looked up at the attention and smiled that innocent smile that had first melted Jake's heart. Kira has a special gift even among our people, Luna explained. She can sense the emotional states of all living beings within a large radius. She will know exactly where every Zephyrian soldier is located and whether they are calm, alert, or alarmed. Kira stood up and walked over to Jake. She placed her small hand on his arm and spoke in her mix of English and clicking sounds. She says, "You are worried about the mission, but determined to see it succeed," Luna translated. She also says you care about her safety, which makes her feel happy and protected. Jake looked down at the little girl with violet eyes and felt that familiar protective instinct surge through him. The idea of bringing a child into combat went against everything he believed in, but he was beginning to understand that Kira was not just any child. The assault begins at dawn, Hayes announced. Morrison, you'll lead Alpha Squad with Luna as your guide. Lopez takes Beta Squad with 2 other E3 volunteers. Gamma Squad stays here to defend the base in case this goes wrong. That night Jake lay awake thinking about the mission ahead. He had fought Zephyrians many times, but always from a position of desperate defense. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow they would take the fight to the enemy with advantages they had never possessed before. Dawn came gray and cold as the assault teams prepared to move out. Luna appeared beside Jake wearing form-fitting armor that seemed to absorb light and carrying weapons he had never seen before. Kira stood next to her mother dressed in similar dark clothing but carrying only a small backpack filled with supplies. "You're really bringing her into combat?" Jake asked Luna quietly. "Kira is safer with us than anywhere else," Luna replied. "And her abilities may be the difference between success and failure for this mission." The journey to downtown New Denver took 2 hours through ruined streets and collapsed buildings. Luna led them by routes that avoided all Zephyrian patrols while Kira whispered constant updates about enemy positions and emotional states. Jake was amazed at how much tactical advantage the little girl's gift provided. When they reached the command center building, Jake could see why the Zephyrians had chosen it. The 40-story tower of glass and steel rose above the surrounding ruins like a dark spear pointed at the sky. Energy weapons had turned the lower floors into a fortress of melted metal and alien technology. Luna studied the building through a small scope, then turned to Jake with that predatory smile he was learning to recognize. 17 guards on the perimeter, 43 inside the building, and 1 very important commander on the top floor who is about to have a very bad day. How can you tell all that? Jake asked. Luna pointed to Kira, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground with her, eyes closed and her face scrunched in concentration. "My daughter can feel their emotions like you might feel heat from a fire. Fear, anger, boredom, confidence. Each emotion has a different signature." Kira opened her violet eyes and spoke rapidly in her clicking language. Luna listened carefully, then nodded. "She says the guards are lazy and overconfident," Luna translated. "They do not expect any serious attack. This will make our job much easier." Luna kissed Kira's forehead and whispered something that made the little girl giggle. Then she turned to Jake with an expression that was suddenly deadly serious. "When we move, stay close and do exactly what I tell you. The Aetheri do not lose battles, Jake Morrison. Today the Zephyrians will learn why." The assault began with Luna simply vanishing into shadow. Jake activated his cloaking device and followed her toward the building, wondering how a simple act of kindness to a hungry child had led him to this moment. Behind him, his squad moved like ghosts through the ruins, ready to take back their world. With the help of allies they had never expected to find, the liberation of Earth had begun, and it started with soup shared between strangers, who became family.